And I guess that's the other point, is that for businesses that are not only looking at this 10-step process, it's that are maybe sort of looking at how they get through this next few months, it's actually using this plan as an evolution piece as well to say, well, when there is that strong economic rebound, what are the things that I need to be doing or thinking about implementing now?
Welcome to the Business Behind Your Business, conversations to help your business grow and thrive. Hi, I'm Paul Sweeney, founder of Pretium Solutions, chartered accountants and certified business advisors, hosting the Business Behind Your Business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business, and we're now at episode 50. So we've reached a milestone here, and there's no better way to celebrate a milestone for the Business Behind Your Business than to invite back Bruce Gleeson, who appeared on our 10th episode just before we moved to a weekly one. But Bruce has been one of our most requested panelists at the moment, particularly because of his expertise dealing with businesses in crisis. So welcome back, Bruce.
Thank you, Paul. Really nice to be back, and really nice to be able to talk to you this afternoon and share hopefully some tips to help particularly family businesses through what is, an ongoing sort of difficult period. But, 50, let's raise the bat. Hopefully we can get it up to 100. But I think the point about these podcasts is really about helping business owners out there and helping them in their journey and providing some education for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason why we started, was to actually provide a way for business owners who may not have access to this kind of advice to access the experts and get the tips and the knowledge to help them grow their business. And particularly in a time like now, we're experiencing where we're recording this in Sydney, in New South Wales, in the middle of an extended lockdown. So we're just about in another 4 weeks on top of our initial 3 or 4 weeks. So it's an extended period of stress and uncertainty for a lot of businesses. So we talked about the last time, which is only a couple of weeks ago, what you should be doing when your business is in trouble. But I think one of the things that's come back to us is okay, that's great. Can we get some practical steps on what I should be doing? And I think you've put together a 10-step guideline on essential steps that every business should be taking. Now, I think some of these steps, though, would really apply to business in general, not just in a time of crisis, but they should be what we'd be doing generally.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think if we start at the fundamental concept that what is crisis management, really it's looking at the strategies designed to help a business deal with a sudden and significant negative event. And I think when we delve into that deeper, generally speaking, some form of crisis management strategy would have 3 distinct phases. That would be the pre-crisis phase, there'd be the response to the crisis itself, and there'd be the response after the crisis. Now, it is true to say that a lot of bigger organisations and indeed government departments like the SES and Rural Fire Service, they have these extensive crisis management plans in place where they spend a lot of time in those 3 distinct phases looking at what and how they'll respond. I think the challenge that is before us and has been with us now since March 2020 has been that for a lot of family businesses that we, as you and I have talked about in previous podcasts, maybe don't have a detailed plan is, well, the pre-crisis phase, that's already gone. We're actually, if we think about it, we're in COVID Mark 2 now because most businesses got through COVID Mark 1. But really it is now saying, well, against that backdrop, what should businesses be doing at the moment? But as you just indicated, how do they then evolve this kind of plan as we come out of the response post-COVID? So that's really sort of what I'm hoping we can talk about today and give owners some useful guidelines.
Yeah, that's great. I think, at the time of this recording, particularly, a lot of the inquiries we're getting as accountants are, what should I be doing? I don't know what's coming next. What should I be doing? How do I prepare? And I think we, in such an environment of uncertainty, having a structured plan or a guideline on how to proceed is a first step to clarity about the situation. I think that's going to be helpful. So we're keen to find out what your 10 essential steps are, Bruce.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think, look, just picking up on your comment about the uncertainty, as I quite often remark to business owners, sometimes for a period of time we've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And certainly there's no better experience than what everybody is going through now in that concept itself. But certainly you're right that in terms of managing that uncomfortability, having a plan and knowing that plan can be adjusted as well helps us get a little bit more comfortable with it. So that's really, the important piece today. And I think why this is so important is that COVID, even the first round and the second round, it's been your classic black swan event. Nobody really saw it coming, but when it came on, it's had this, profound effect that many people are still, really finding difficult to navigate, simply because despite the government messaging, there is no precise time frame, particularly for New South Wales residents and business owners, as to when we will be out of lockdown. So that uncertainty is creating pressure, creating anxiety. And so let's talk about, I guess, the 10-step plan that I believe businesses can follow, which really is based around this principle of let's just keep it simple. Let's not overcomplicate it at a time where they've already got so much information that they're being asked to digest.
Yeah, I think simplicity is the key here, because we've got a lot of information and conflicting information coming from different sources that people are listening to and hearing from. So narrowing it back to something simple, easy to follow. Let's get started.
Let's get started. Let's get into it. So I think the first step is really, be honest with yourself about where the business is at. Okay, that might sound a little bit trite, but it is about, firstly, taking stock and saying, where is the business at? Because in my experience, lots of business owners that are in some level of financial distress just start to close down or shut down. And I mean that in an emotional way. So they stop doing things like opening emails or opening the mail because they're starting to get paralysed in a sense of this negativity, like, if I open that email, it's just going to be telling me that I owe this creditor this amount of money or something else. So, my initial step is be honest with yourself. It's because it's the first step in actually working out what can be done to turn the business around. So that's the first step. And the second step, is really, have an understanding of what levels of government support there are at the moment. Now, that, as we know, is a moving feast, but understand you're not meant to be an expert in knowing whether or not you're eligible for all of that support, but it is to say take an interest in understanding what levels of support are likely to be available so that you can actually have an informed discussion with your accountant or your bookkeeper about how you go about working out your eligibility for those. So that's important, because if you are ultimately eligible, then you don't want to miss that opportunity. So that's step number 2. Step number 3, and while you're talking to your accountant about, the eligibility for that type of government support, or your bookkeeper, is to do your accounts. Make sure that you know your financial position. Make sure you know who you owe money to. Make sure you know when those amounts are due to those creditors. These might sound like simple things, but again, it goes back to my original point about being honest with yourself, that when we feel the walls are closing in, we start to shut other things out. And so doing your accounts and knowing what not only is the position insofar as the liabilities of the business, but equally, what are the prospects in terms of the short-term trading position. Now, we'll talk a little bit about that once we've maybe got through the 10 steps, because there's a few other points that I can cover off there. But that's step number 3. And obviously with, good sort of accounting software now with MYOB and Xero, there should be the ease of update there, where you can get on a Zoom or a Teams meeting with your accountant, share the screen and see what is going on there. So that shouldn't be that difficult an exercise. The 4th step really coming out of looking at the first view is, are you actually already broke or are you already insolvent? Now, I don't say that, taking, other than meaning it as it is. It's a tough question to ask, but the question does need to be considered, because realistically, if you continue trading a business whilst it is insolvent, that is, it's unable to pay its debts as and when they fall due, then you as directors in the business may become personally liable. And that's something that obviously you don't want to unnecessarily expose yourself to. So it's really coming to that sort of piece around, well, if there is that concern, and as we'll sort of move through the steps, maybe that's also a reason to then seek out some professional advice from somebody like myself or a lawyer, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. Step number 5, and these next few steps are all geared around the liabilities of the business. Now, the thing is that I guess unlike previous business cycles, what we have seen in this first and second round of COVID is an unprecedented response by the banks and other government departments, and indeed other key suppliers to a whole range of businesses, to say, we're going to put deferrals in place, come and talk to us about repayment arrangements. But there's 2 important points here that most of them keep coming back to, and that is engage with us and engage with us as early as you can. Now, I was on a call earlier today, and I guess before this current New South Wales lockdown, Paul, in my industry, we were all starting to get messaging that the ATO was starting to become a little bit more active again in chasing up outstanding business debt. But I guess with the state of the lockdown in New South Wales and its broader impact on the national economy, the messaging that I'm now hearing is that the ATO's gone back to more of its accommodative approach that it had in the early and middle part of COVID, if we call it COVID Mark 1. So again, and that's sort of centred around the premise that, look, if your business is struggling because of the second round of COVID, again, with the assistance of your bookkeeper or your accountant, look at whether or not there is the ability for you to engage with the ATO and, put forward some kind of repayment plan. Clearly, the challenge there is that if you've, as a business, had a number of failed payment plans prior to COVID, then those kinds of factors may sort of be taken into account by the ATO. But again, like you've got the key creditors being the banks and other financiers that have all offered deferrals, and they're things that you should be seeking out and seeing how that can assist in getting your business through this next really challenging period. So steps 5, step 6 and step 7 are really about talking to your banks, your lenders. Step 6, talking to the ATO. And step 7, talking to your suppliers. Now, let me just make one further point about your suppliers. Often that's a very hard conversation, because the last thing that you want to do is let your supplier know, particularly a key supplier to the business, that you might be in some level of financial difficulty. But I think there is very much a mood in the broader sort of business community at the moment that the impact of COVID is not something that you brought upon the business yourself, and that most sophisticated and reasonable suppliers that I've been dealing with on behalf of clients have actually been receptive to that discussion. And the point simply is, if you don't have the discussion, you'll never know. So that's really, the point around these last 3 steps is Engage and engage early, and actually, importantly, though, go into that conversation with a plan. Don't just go into that conversation saying, hey, guys, I can't pay you, because the next question they will ask is, well, how are you proposing to deal with the debt? So go into that conversation early, but go into it with a plan as to what you're going to offer as a solution, okay? And I think step 8, again, is about saying you may need to get some qualified assistance in addition to the support that you might need from your bookkeeper or accountant when it comes to things like step 4, which I talked about, is, are you already broke? You may need to get some advice from somebody like myself about insolvent trading, other sort of things that you can do to mitigate your risk there, or indeed sort of maybe get some legal advice as well. But, there are a lot of complexities around continuing to trade a business if it's insolvent, and what we want to try and do is make sure that you're making informed decisions and doing so along the way. And so that's step number 8. Step number 9, which has been key throughout COVID generally, is look after your mental health. I tend to be a fairly sort of routine-based person, but I have to confess that even in this sort of lockdown, the routine has become so routine that you actually have to look for different ways to challenge yourself so that you keep sort of in the right frame of mind. So look after your mental health. And I guess, for people that will mean different things. They'll do different things to re-energise or reposition themselves, but make sure that you've got that's part of the plan. And I guess the final step is don't wait. Don't wait for us to come out of COVID and then say, I now need to go and see my bookkeeper or accountant or get some qualified advice. And that, again, sounds a little bit sort of simple, but the messaging is, follow this plan and don't wait until you're waiting. Don't wait until certain things happen that necessarily aren't in your control anyway. Because what we need to appreciate that certainly came out of the first round of COVID is the government, for example, started to recognise, particularly around family enterprises, and that's why it introduced some legislation in January this year around the Small Business Restructuring Plan, which was really sort of looking at how family businesses with debts up to $1 million can cost effectively administered and help through a process to enable them to trade going forward. So there's a recognition by the government that really what it's trying to do through COVID is to have as many family businesses. And why am I saying family business? Because they typically dominate the insolvency statistics. So the government sort of pushed this legislation through, recognising the need to save as many family businesses as they could, because they recognise that family businesses also employ lots of people. So it's really, important that you understand that dynamic is there, as is the dynamic for banks, the ATO and key suppliers to want to help try and turn around family businesses where they can, but really in following some of those key steps around engagement, that's really got to be, where we position our businesses.
Well, that's a really good 10-point or 10-step process to follow there, Bruce. And I think just coming back to revisit some of those, I think that honest assessment is the starting point, like being honest about the situation and the circumstances. I think, until you accept the reality of what's going on at the moment, it's very hard to move forward from that point.
Mm. Yeah, and look, as I said, it's about accepting the fact that, nobody created the impact of COVID on their business. It's come along. It's the classic black swan event. I think what we do need to just remind ourselves, though, is that when Victoria had that extended period of lockdown that went for a little over 100 days, I think, from memory, it had quite a big bounce when it came out. And I think for those in New South Wales at the moment that, looking really at just what's in front of them, I'd sort of just challenge us to look at the horizon a little bit and also reflect on how Victoria sort of came out of it, because it had that sort of quite, big jump. And, I think certainly in what I've heard of the economists, they believe that once we do achieve that higher vaccination level and come out of, this rigorous sort of lockdown, that there will be a significant economic rebound. And I guess that's the other point, is that for businesses that are not only looking at this 10-step process, it's that are maybe sort of looking at how they get through this next few months, it's actually using this plan as an evolution piece as well to say, well, when there is that strong economic rebound, what are the things that I need to be doing or thinking about implementing now, so that if I get a strong surge in demand for my goods or services, that I can actually cope with that as well. Because, that strong rebound is likely to happen for many sectors, and it's about sort of how that might sort of be factored in as well. But then counterbalanced to that is looking at things like, little challenges that there might be in supply chains for businesses that actually end up having bigger consequences in terms of revenue generation or whatever. So, for example, in the construction industry, where some builders are having difficulties getting timber or getting certain aluminium products, the difficulties that then sort of means in terms of the completion time for the project and the ability to then get revenue in. So it's really sort of trying at the moment to sort of look at what things are going to impact your business, and for each of the businesses there will be slightly different considerations.
Yeah, I know when we first had this COVID situation, well, 12 months ago, really, or longer, there were a number of steps that we were encouraging people to do. And one of those was actually to make a plan for how they were going to come out of it. But the second one, and you've already mentioned this, is looking at your supply chain and what's going on in it. So look, we've seen, particularly where we're looking at importing manufactured products, the time period to produce, particularly in overseas countries where COVID is even more rampant, has increased. What used to take 3 months is now taking 7 to 8 months to arrive. So managing your supply chain. But this whole idea of planning, I've had discussions already with business owners who are currently in lockdown, unable to supply because they supply a physical product or service. But the conversation we've had with them is about planning for how they're going to get started when they go back. What's going to happen? What's the demand from their customers? So if we're looking at a health professional, so acupuncture, physio, chiro at the moment, we've got all these people working from home at desks and chairs the wrong height. So there's a lot of likelihood that people are going to be needing some remedial work straight after that. So we're looking at campaigns for them to start creating awareness that as soon as the doors are open, come and get your body fixed up because you've been torturing it sitting at the wrong height desk and things like that. So there are ways of preparing for coming back, but you've got to do that planning process. Now, not all of that requires money. Like, you can do a lot of that planning without spending a cent.
Yeah, that's right. And, I guess picking up on your example there's a really cost-effective way that, those businesses can keep in touch with their existing customers while they go through this sort of transitory period, that they get the customers ready to all come in en masse. So you're right that, there's a couple of steps in that process that are really important. And it goes back to sort of what we covered a little bit in our last podcast as well, and that is that, devote enough time to be thinking about the business rather than being in the business all the time and doing the business. And with that sort of comes these kinds of solutions to, well, what can I do to then sort of not only keep engagement with my customers, what do I do then to manage them when we move through this transitory period? On the supply side, what other conversations, what other negotiations can I have with other suppliers so that if I do get a spike up, so all of a sudden, you might now have 2 or 3 suppliers, not the one supplier that you've had before. But it's really just looking at those considerations because, at the moment, as I said, one of the critical steps here, being honest with yourself, being that starting point, is actually sort of recognising that you can at times become quite inward looking about the business, and you really then need to sort of say, well, if that's where I'm at, that's actually the first thing that I need to try and address, because that will then sort of hold the business back itself from looking at moving through this transitory period. And also, if I need to get some help on some turnaround advice, how I get that and when do I get it.
Yeah, so you mentioned, I think points 6, 7 and 8, talking about suppliers and actually communicating with banks and ATO. And you did make a comment that if you've got pre-existing failed payment arrangements with the ATO, then there may be another problem there. And I think it also goes back to being too inward looking at the business, that you need to be aware of if something wasn't working before COVID. There's no guarantee that COVID is going to fix it and it's going to work straight after. If there was a problem before, now is the time to look at, well, what can we do differently? What can we do to turn the business around, make it more profitable? Is there something that we need to stop doing? Or is there something that we could do differently? Or do we need to review our pricing? Have we been absorbing too much of the price increases over time? There are actions you can take.
Yeah, there are. And, again, sort of nothing changes if nothing changes, Paul. So, if it was the case that you were not profitable before going into COVID and your liabilities were increasing, that might even, become a worse position through COVID, because certain industries are seeing input prices increase quite significantly. And, fundamentally, really, you need to look at then, okay, well, if the business wasn't tracking as it should have before COVID, what are some of the changes I need to make so that I can hopefully come out of COVID? And, it is somewhat more common in family businesses because you've got control within a smaller group of people than in a much bigger sort of organisation where you've got control spread across multiple sort of departments. So that is an important point that you make.
Yeah. So, and I think you mentioned about not waiting until COVID finishes before you start to plan. I think that's an important thing. I think if you wait that time period, then you're going to be catching up right from the beginning. I keep being told that business owners and employees have a lot of spare time at the moment. I'm not sure that applies to every industry. I know it's certainly not the case with us, but I think you do need to be planning for how you're going to come out on the other side of COVID, when that is, and even if we are still stuck with COVID in some form for the next year, 2 years, 5 years, how is your business going to have to change to manage in that new environment?
Yeah, look, and it all comes back to the uncertainty piece. It's hard for businesses to absolutely plan when there's still a level of uncertainty. But I think if we're balanced about it, what we would say is that within a certain time frame, the hard lockdowns that are in place are going to be relaxed, and businesses and households are going to need to get used to living with COVID in much the same way that we're used to living with a bad flu season. Now, that's not to be, I guess, not appreciative of the significant impacts that it's had. But it is to say that we will sort of return to a level of normalcy. And going to your point, we need to have a plan as part of returning to that normalcy. And I think the don't wait bit is really centred around everybody is in the same boat here. Nobody expected COVID to happen, but it happened. And so for some businesses, that has meant that it's had a more significant impact than others. And as we've talked about in another podcast, for some businesses that were more impacted in the first round of COVID, they're less impacted in the second round, but equally those that, weren't as badly impacted in the first round of COVID are now more adversely impacted in the second round. So we're seeing sort of different themes play out as well. And so that don't wait is really saying, you don't have to sort of be in the boat alone. You're not in the boat alone. So seek out some help.
Yeah, that's great. So, Bruce, you've given us your 10 points or your 10 steps. Is there one key thing that you would advise people to do other than downloading the 10-step guide that we're going to make available to them, which you'll be able to find on the website, www.thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com, or in the podcast show notes. We'll put a link to it there. But what's the key thing, if nothing else gets done, what's the one key thing that a business owner needs to do right now?
I think the key thing is that they need to, it goes back to step one, they need to be honest with themselves. There's no point sort of, not acknowledging that there mightn't be a challenge that the business has. And because that is, if you're not prepared to ask yourself that hard question, then the rest of the steps really you're not going to truly benefit from, because you're going to stop there and you're not going to progress any further.
That's great. Thanks, Bruce. Now, Bruce, if people want to contact you directly, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, look, I think importantly, Paul, we always offer a free hour of advice, whether that be over the phone, via Teams, Zoom. Obviously, can't sort of do in person at the moment, but they can get hold of me via email, bgleeson@jonespartners.net.au. Via my mobile at the moment, 0417 889 222, or ring the office number and you can get a message through to me that way, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, look, I think this is all about trying to give people information that they can get that's tailored to their circumstances, Paul, too, because there is lots of free information on the internet, and some of that is useful. But importantly, as you know, with your clients, it's understanding the client's business that is important, so that you can then actually work out, well, what is the right turnaround plan here? What are the right things to be looking at? Is it the supply side of their business, or is that okay? Or is it the revenue side of their business that's a problem? So it's not until we actually understand the customer's business that we can actually then say, well, these are the things that probably need to be the immediate focus. And so that's why having that meeting or that discussion does enable us to get a little bit more familiar with the business.
Yeah, that's great. And look, if you are in need, I encourage you to reach out to Bruce. Highly recommend Bruce. I've been working with Bruce on and off in various aspects for a very long time now, going back probably 20 years now, Bruce. So it's been a while. So you're not new kid on the block. Lots of experience and wisdom to help business owners get through this crisis.
Thanks, Paul. And I think, really our role as advisors to business is also to recognise that there may be other professionals that we can recommend that the businesses talk to. If there's a particular legal need or other particular needs, it's really about accessing our resources as well. So certainly, we want to see businesses, get through this crisis, because we will get through it. It's just a little bit tricky at the moment because we don't have as much certainty as we would like.
Absolutely. And look, part of what we do here at the Business Behind Your Business is we try and bring the experts to you. So bring the experts to you in an easy way for you to digest, raising some issues and things for you to consider to help you grow your business. If you've got a specific question, maybe a specific question you'd like Bruce to come back and answer in a future episode, or for another area of our business expertise, then you can always leave an audio question and you'll be featured on one of our upcoming podcasts. And to do that, you just go to speakpipe.com/the business behind your business, and you can leave your message there and we'll answer it in an upcoming episode. So, Bruce, once again, thank you for your time. Appreciate how busy you are at the moment, but thank you for sharing all of that wisdom and those 10 steps, and we're going to make that available. So please grab hold of that and use it. It's some great stuff that Bruce has shared with us today.
Thank you, Paul. And as you said, if people have topics for the future that they might like to suggest, then Paul and I are certainly happy to look at those and collaborate. And again, this is really sort of a session and a podcast for business owners and other parties that might sort of hopefully get some educational sort of content from what we're providing. So thanks once again, Paul.
Thanks for listening. Do you have a question you'd like our team of experts to answer? If you do, send your question to
podcast at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. To hear more from The Business Behind Your Business, don't forget to subscribe using your favourite podcast player. Or you can visit the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website.